So right now I'm seeing that dealers aren't able to sell cars even when they're taking them to auction to dump them. And these car dealers I'm talking about aren't small independent car dealers like me. I'm talking about these massive companies, these franchise dealers who are getting trade-ins and taking them to the auction, and they're no selling. And what we're seeing right now is a downtrending market. And I'm a used car dealer, and I have been one for 14 years. And I see these ups and downs in the car market over the course of my career. And it seems like right now the down is happening quicker and when people aren't really expecting it to happen. But there are a lot of things that are playing on in this market that are leading to a lot of these no sales, a lot of these if bids that are happening at auctions. And I'll explain what both of those things mean in just a minute. But what it's allowing me to do is go to auctions when we're seeing a lot of this weakness from a lot of other car dealers, both on the franchise side and on the small independent side, where I'm able to go in and buy a lot of cars for a lot cheaper than what I have been able to buy them for over the last, 6 months or so. So what's happening right now is we've seen a lot of pull forward in demand on the new franchise side. You had a lot of people that went ahead and bought brand new cars to get ahead of all these tariffs that were supposed to create massive price increases on these new cars. I heard a lot of new car salespeople talk about, okay, well, prices were going to increase by 15, 20, 25% on certain brands. Obviously, we haven't seen that. Now, we've seen that some brands have announced that they're going to increase some of these prices, and they're going to do it pretty soon, but they haven't done it yet. And I feel like when they do increase these prices, when the vehicles from tariffs actually hit the ground, that they're going to get hit with a brick wall from a lot of their consumers, and they're just not going to be able to increase prices. I would walk you down the rest of the line of my cars, but there's customers sitting in the car right before that. I didn't want to put them on the screen. But anyway, so we're having this pull forward in demand. It actually increases the amount of vehicles that are going to auction. You have to think, how do cars get to the auction? Well, they're all trade-ins for the most part. Now there's going to be some repos, there's going to be some fleet vehicles that make their way, the lease returns, things like that. But a majority of the cars that I buy that hit these auctions come from new car dealer trade-ins. So we've had this experience where, okay, new car dealers have been unseasonably, is that even the right way to say it? It's been a weird situation where during we're entering in a slower time in the car market, even traditionally for new car dealers, but they've experienced this weird really increased volume because of people trying to get ahead of tariffs to this pull forward in demand, and that's creating more trade-ins during this time of year where we typically don't see that. Now, all of this is going to fall off a cliff because the people who trade in their cars, like they all got pulled forward. They're not going to be buyers in the middle of summer, so it's going to be very, very slow. But you have all this supply of trade-ins that are coming into the used car market to these auctions at a time period where used car dealers are the slowest pretty much they're going to be all year round. Now, they're a little bit slower. We're a little bit slower around like Christmas time, end of the year. But other than that time period, this is the second most slow that we're going to experience. It's very close to what we experience at the end of the year too, as far as slowness goes. But you have that, and then you have increased supply coming to these auctions. Well, that's a recipe for disaster for a lot of these trade-in managers, for a lot of the used car managers at these new car franchises, because they're getting a lot of inventory. They have to make sales right now because they were slow before that. They're trying to make deals done. They're trying to meet their quotas. They're trying to get end of the month stuff done. And so they're having to pay up a little bit for these trade-ins just to get deals done. And then they're taking them to auction, and then they get no sold, or they have to put a lot of if bids on a lot of these cars. And what a no sell is when a franchise dealer brings a car to the auction, or any dealer brings a car to the auction, and they want, let's say, $10,000 for it, but because the dealers that are there bidding on it, they don't want to pay $10,000 for it. Let's say the car only goes up to $9,000. Well, that's a $1,000 difference. That's a 10% difference of what the floor, the minimum that franchise dealer will actually take for that car. and it brought 10% less than what their minimum is. So a lot of cases they no sell that car, and that's what we're seeing. And when you've seen a downtrending market, you have trade-in managers or these dealerships that will give this amount for a car, but as the market's going down, well, it takes 2 weeks for them to get it to auction. So now that car on the wholesale level is only worth this much. So they bring it to auction thinking it's worth this much because that's what they traded for, but it only brings this much. So they have to go and recalibrate what they're doing. And what happens in a lot of cases is that they'll no sell that car, and they'll be like, you know what, it was just a weird week, whatever, not enough buyers, whatever the situation is, and they'll run the car again in the next week, and they'll find that the car doesn't just bring $9,000, but now it brings $8,500 because there's a saying in the auction world. It's called first money, best money. And what happens is typically the first week that a dealer brings a car to auction to sell it, well, that's the best money, that's the most money that the car is going to bring, and it continues to go down from there because the situation, what I know as a used car dealer being on the buy side of those kind of things, is that, okay, I see a car going through the auction and I want to pay, I'm a car dealer that sells cars that are $5,000 and under. I want to pay $2,500 for a car, and I see somebody else bid it up to $3,000. I got off of it at $2,500, and then the selling dealer says, well, no, I can't take $3,000 for it. I need $4,000 for that car. Well, that tells me that I don't even need to look at the car the next week when it runs again, because I only want to pay $2,500 for it. So I'm definitely not paying $4,000 for it. So what happens is a lot of dealers that see that were interested in the car, well, they don't even look at the car the next week. They don't even bid on the car the next week. There's less competition for that particular car because we know. We keep a log up in here of what cars actually bring at the auction, and we remember them week in, week out, because there might be 1,000 cars running that we see throughout the week, but we probably only have 30, 40 on our list, so we can remember what cars actually go through that we are interested in, and we're just not going to bid on them. So that takes competition out for that car. It brings the bids lower. So that car that dealer wanted for $10,000 for that first week, well, it only brought $9,000. Okay, run it again next week, and now maybe even that dealer said, okay, well, you know what, it's probably not going to bring $10,000 because we saw it only bring $9,000. Let's drop our price down to like $9,500. Maybe we can get somebody to pay that for it. And what happens is it brings $8,500. So then at that point, that franchise dealer can make the decision, okay, are we going to just cut it because we can see that the market is trending down? We can see that dealers are getting a little bit weaker, or do they hang on to it again? And a lot of these franchise dealers, what happens is they run into this trap of keeping it for 2, 3, 4 weeks because they paid this much for it and they want this much for it, but it keeps on bringing the lower price. And then at some point, 3 or 4 weeks later, and I've seen this happen thousands and thousands of times over the course of my 14 years, and I've been on the other side of it a lot of times, and that's why I won't move on a car. If I bid up a car to $2,500 and they want $3,000, I'm not going to give them a penny more because I know what's going to happen. I've seen it happen too many times before where I bid on a car for $2,500. They want $3,000, and then the next week I end up bidding on it for $2,200, and they end up just selling it for me. So at the end of the road, at some point, that dealership just clicks and they're like, you know what, it's not going to bring any more. So just whatever it brings, sell it. And if they would have just sold it that first week for whatever it brought, then they would have ended up so much better. This happens so many times. And then you get into another situation, what's called an if bid at these sales, when I'm seeing the frequency of those cars or those situations rise, is where a car won't bring that floor. We'll use that $10,000 example again. Dealer wants $10,000. It brings $9,000 at the auction. And instead of just no selling it flat out, what they'll say is, okay, put it on a phone call, put it on an if. Those two things mean the exact same thing. And what will happen is after the auction is done, then the auction company will call that buyer and say, okay, and this is where the phone call terminology comes in. They'll call that buyer and say, okay, well, the buyer wanted $10,000. You bid $9,000. The buyer has said they'll come down to $9,500 if you want to buy. There's basically a negotiation that happens. And from the buyer's side, from my side, what will typically happen? Okay, well, I bid it off at $9,000. I understand they're at $9,500. Can you sell it to me for $9,200? They'll go back to the buyer. There'll be maybe one more back and forth. Typically not, but usually they'll take that. If the buyer is even remotely close to what the seller wants, then a lot of times the seller will actually take it, especially in this market when they go through and the seller has their sheet and they brought 30 cars and 15 or 16 of them were no sales or if bids. They're like, you know what? Okay, we got to move some cars. We'll take it. I see what's happening. And then you'll see this just downtrend happening every single week. And we're seeing it right now in the data, Black Book and Manheim, where you have down, down, down. But all of a sudden, pretty soon, you're going to have a big whoosh down. And that's what I'm talking about we're waiting on right now, is to see it in the data, because I'm already seeing all these no sales, all these if bids, but after 2, 3, 4 weeks of these dealers holding on and trying to get these high prices, they all cut loose, and it seems like all at the exact same time, and then you see that whoosh, that crash in the wholesale data. And that's what I'm expecting to see here in the next 2, 3 weeks, maybe, that we're going to see this big whoosh down, because a lot of these dealers are holding on for bidders that aren't there. A lot of weakness in the market on the used car dealer side, and we're seeing this pull forward in demand that is now done, but we're seeing those trade-ins in the market right now, and it's creating more supply of these auctions. I'm seeing more cars at auction, and it's great for us because we're able to go in there and buy more and actually be able to be more picky about the cars that we're buying. But there's not a lot of us on the other side, because a lot of these used car dealers, they're very weak right now. So they're not there to buy all this inventory that's coming through the system. Now, a lot of this is going to be short-lived, because I think a lot of these new car dealers are going to stop selling their new cars because of all the pull forward in demand is going to be done. But that's what we're experiencing right now, where even these cars that are being sent to auction to be dumped, they're having a hard time selling them.